In this video, fellow designer Arthur and I will conduct a portfolio review, sharing insights on what recruiters and hiring managers are looking for. We'll critique real work, discussing what works and what can be improved. And by the end, you'll have some key takeaways and practical tips to help you elevate your own portfolio and stand out in this competitive design field. And so, Arthur, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Arthur, and I am a designer. I'm based in London. I have worked at Meta, Google, RGA, and Wise. I'm currently consulting for design studios and tech companies in my own design practice. It's a privilege to be here with Timothy and people at Good Maven.
We're going to break down Arthur's portfolio. We're going to walk through the work that they've done, talk about the structure of the site, the storytelling, and how they've really put things together in order to try and attract hiring managers and recruiters. So, Arthur, do you want to share your screen and we can start looking through your work?
Sure. Over the last 3 years, I've been talking to people, talking to other designers, doing mentorship, interviewing, and being interviewed, of course. And I've noticed that there is a couple of patterns and a couple of ways that people do portfolios that make sense for them, but also gets traction from hiring managers, from recruiters, and from anyone who is looking for designers. So every designer knows that like portfolio is a really hard thing to come up with because it's really hard to talk about ourselves, especially for me. And I wanted to pull this portfolio out quickly because I needed to share with some companies, with some people who were like requesting work for me. Because I needed this like really quick, I started designing straight on the tool that I designed the portfolio on to see how it worked and what the tool could offer to me. There are many ways you can do this. Of course, like I had an initial design thinking on Figma, which I kind of like try to make like merge get in between while I was doing this portfolio. I think one thing that's really important to me is to have like really apparent menu items where I can see like a description of the things that I want to find. So for instance, on the top, you can see that's a home link. Of course, you want to go back to this page. You have the cases, which are the most important things of this portfolio. And then I really love my photography work, which I brought in the very first highlight. And then I have my design Instagram and my LinkedIn. I really wanted these to stand out like really big, just because I want to make it simple and straightforward. And then as you scroll, you see this highlight, which is almost of like a quick introduction of what I do. And because I don't believe roles in general, I think that like roles in different companies, they have different names. And I've wore so many hats in my career before. So I just listed all the hats that I wore here, just because I don't think there is a set structure and a set name for what we do. Anyway, we're all designers. And I just wanted to say this is my 2024 portfolio. This is my work hub. I don't want to call this portfolio because I want this to be almost like a homepage for like myself and for a sort of a studio that I represent, which is me. And then I start with a couple of really important things about myself. One thing is about my identity. I identify as a they, them. I'm a non-binary person. The other thing is the time of my career. I've been working for 19 years now, between design and art direction. Mostly those are the main roles that I had across these years. And then I just wanted to show my experience in a really brief and like designed way. Of course, everything fitting in a grid, everything needs to be super modernist and the way that I wanted to design this portfolio.
Yeah, so if I jump in a little bit, I think a couple of things stood out to me, which I thought was really great that I think some designers sometimes forget to do. Like, I think, you mentioned about sharing, for your photography work on here. I think portfolios aren't just about your professional career. I think it's about you as a person. I think it's important to kind of express who you are, right? And you've done that here. You kind of link the things you care about. Your photo IG isn't like necessarily going to get you the job, but it's nice to kind of to show people a bit more of the human side of you and like what you're interested in and what you care about and what kind of drives you. Because part of landing a job isn't just about the work itself. It's also about the cultural fit and you as a person. And so it's really great seeing that. yeah, like strong navigation. I think that's a key part. You know, a lot of recruiters are looking through tons of portfolios, hundreds in some cases. So having a really clear, strong way of getting around the portfolio, seeing the work is really powerful. And you didn't quite reach there yet, but when I looked at your portfolio yesterday, and I really loved kind of seeing work as quickly as possible. I think, you know, we're designers or visual people. So like just below the fold and just below the information is like, here's work that I've done. So I wanted to kind of call that out as well. But yeah, keep going.
No, thanks. Yeah, that aligns a lot with what I see as in good portfolios in general. So it's every portfolio is almost like a collage of things that you think and things that you think it resonates well. Of course, design is made of inspiration. We follow some certain trends. We follow certain design schools. We follow certain designs that we love. We learn to love them throughout our careers. So I am heavily influenced by post Bauhaus stuff. So everything that I do for myself, it should always like be a bit more like minimal. Of course, like every case is a different case. We should design for brands. When I'm trying to walk people through my work, I try to build this sort of like almost like my branding. There's not like a brand or a logo or something like that, but there's also like the sort of like level of personality. But also for me, what I wanted to do is that my portfolio I shouldn't have an identity there's like that stands out against the work itself. It should be a little bit more in the background, but sophisticated, but in the background. So then the work itself can pop up. So I wanted to avoid having like lots of micro interactions, lots of things that make my portfolio kind of like the thing, because the thing should be the work. So that's like the hardest part, is like to find like a level of sauce that you want to add to your portfolio. So this very first moment here, it kind of like I think Timothy, it talks about myself and about my work as a merge. So we need to find like that balance between those two things. And then, like you said, like the first thing you see is like a little bit of my work as a whole as a designer, because like Timothy said, I think we are all like visual people. And I mean, as much as design is strategy and design is product, I just wanted to highlight some of the like really quick like JPEGs and quick images of the things that I've done that I'm proud of. So there's a lot of like work that I did for companies, but there's also a lot of work that I did for myself too. So there's that's like the how we do this sort of presentation page. It's usually a merge between like what you are and what you can offer to the company. Like Timothy said, like cultural fit is really important for me. Yeah.
Just on that point, like, you know, I remember when I was interviewing at places, I would often show work that I've done just for myself, side projects, little interaction concepts. I think that's also, you know, a few of the designers have reached out to me and say, hey, should I show like things that I've done on the side that aren't like at a company or don't have metrics? Like I think it's important to share what you're proud of, and you know, it's all sort of in the service of communicating who you are, communicating your skills, communicating your eye, your taste. All these elements are important in kind of creating I guess a complete picture of who you are. And so yeah, I think it's great seeing some of those side projects and kind of, yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah. So one thing, like Timothy, like while setting and talking to do this call, Timothy showed his passion, his side project, which is a passion for for mechanical keyboards, and I was really impressed. And that kind of creates a start building the image of the person, of that creative person you're hiring, or like you want to be hired by, you know. So that starts to build that your personality as a designer, and that's really important also, because we really want to have people who are passionate about creativity and passionate about design at a certain extent. So I always try to bring that I love photography and I love doing design as a playful thing. So that's really important for me, and I always look for people who are passionate about like visual things, about strategy, or passionate about something. I'm not saying that we all should have a side gig, because that puts a lot of pressure also on people, because everyone thinks, oh, if I'm not doing like enough, if I'm not on theater, if am not like a cinema passionate, or if I am not like someone who loves art, I'm not going to be as successful as a designer. No, you can be successful as a designer, but there's always like something that like you really would love to share about you, and that's not necessarily related to photography, or it could be, I love going out for in furniture shops. I love furniture. I love going all. I love traveling. I love Japan or something like that. It's really important. It's really interesting to know people better.
Yeah.
And then going back to the portfolio thing. So after I go through this sort of like reel of the things that I like and things that I did that I'm proud of, I just wanted to reinforce as a secondary thing, where was my last role, just because it kind of aligns with your career progression. So I want people to, if they want to hire me as a design consultant, I want them to know what was the last place I worked at, just exactly like what to expect from me. And yeah, I just added like currently what I'm doing, which is design consultancy, acceleration, and as a freelancer, and then what I'm focused on and what I'm specialized on. I didn't have those two sections before, but then after talking to people and understanding like that, as a designer, I grew up to be super. I started being super multidisciplinary, just because when I started doing design, which was in Brazil, it was like early days for product design, early days for UX and everything. So we didn't have a set role. We wouldn't be product designers. We wouldn't be brand designers. We'd just be designers. So I grew up knowing all those concepts and knowing to connect all those things. So I just needed people to understand what I'm specialized in, and that helps people while they're hiring for me. Because like first I got some questions. So are you looking for product design roles? Are you looking for brand roles? What are you looking for? And then I was like, actually, I can do both. But if you show them the names that they're looking for, it's easier for them to understand, okay, I'm going to work with this person, or I'm not going to work with this person.
That's great. Yeah. I think it helps you kind of land the jobs you're looking for if you can clearly articulate, your skills, what you can do. Yeah, I also love actually seeing on here like talking about business is also really, really powerful. Like, I know with like you said, the design role is not a sort of a singular one, and especially when it comes to in tech companies, like the business element is such a big piece, and so the calling out of sort of business transformation, I think is really powerful. It kind of helps communicate, like, I understand the business element of design, like, and how design is applied to making a business successful. So yeah, calling that out. I don't see that a lot in many portfolios. So calling that out, I think is really cool. Nice.
That's thanks for calling that out. I think there's something I forgot to mention, which is, I think because people see my portfolio, and I think that kind of resonates with your type of work too, Timothy. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we are super visual, and people sometimes have this preconception of, oh, this person is super visual, is super like on the side, because there's like a sort of a spectrum that everyone thinks about, which is you're either too strategic or you either too visual. And then when someone is super visual, they think they might have this preconception that the person doesn't have the understanding of the overall like business, which is what drives our work these days. So I really wanted to call that out, because to kind of overcome that feeling and that preconception. I think I did a presentation coaching before in my career, and then one thing that I was really impressed by, and that I never did before, is like, who am I designing for? So we would like lay out those people. I am designing for people who would want to hire me. So these people might be working in big tech companies, in design studios, or advertising agencies, or whatever. And what are their thoughts about someone like me? So, and how I can compensate those thoughts with information. So that's really important while designing your portfolio, which is if you're like heavily in the strategy spectrum of a product designer, for instance, it might be good for you to say something like, to show something like, oh, I know about visual design, or at least I know how to judge a good visual design, or at least I have some sort of understanding of how to craft a good product after my strategy is done. So for me, that's really important. And that's something I really want to do, which is compensate the things that people might think I'm not good at and show them that I have a vision for that. And one thing that I learned throughout my career, and that's my take on design, and that's what I want to offer to companies, is I want to design products and brands with the highest craft standards. This is a bit obvious. We all should set an aim for the highest craft standards, but for me, I want people to look at, I know that this person can design a good product in terms of craft, also not only on the strategy side. So one thing to call out, I wanted people, after scrolling this page, I wanted people to understand what type of design they should expect from me in a really straightforward sentence. I know it doesn't look that inspiring as it should be, but it's really straight to the point. So if you want to hire me, this is what I'm going to offer. So don't it's good because it helps people to know, okay, this person is not for me, or I would love to work with this person, because it can kind of filter and kind of like help me get exactly the type of job that I want to get. So this is really helpful. I usually tell people to have this sort of big, bold statement of what you really want to do in what is your specific thing, and what's that thing that you think that puts you out of the pool of talents. Yeah, and in the end, like, because I don't have the menu here, and I just want to, if you already saw enough and you want to get in touch with me, you have my email here. And if you want to see my work, you can click straight in my work. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a good time to maybe see some of your work and check out some of the case studies and the structure. Yeah, I mean, you touched on it a little bit around like thinking about the audience, being recruiters or hiring managers. And so, yeah, I think storytelling is a really, really powerful element here that I often also tell the people that I coach around portfolios, is that like, it's important to kind of like communicate a narrative. And so, yeah, looking at your site, I definitely felt that. So it'd be cool to kind of, yeah, walk through that and check out your case studies.
So after going through the first page, through my leaf page or my presentation page, users can see my work here, and then it goes to the cases page. One thing that is really important for me in the portfolio is to be like really intentional of which page you're in, to signpost people who are looking to your portfolio. So in this case, I'm in the cases page. Again, like, we repeat the menu on the top, which is important because I want people to have access to all those at any point of their experience while working in my portfolio. And the cases page, one thing that the best portfolios that I've seen, and it's, again, we get inspired by portfolios. There's a sort of a mental model that kind of comes across in every portfolio. And I think that's really positive. That's really interesting. Sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Of course, we're not going to copy a portfolio exactly like it is, because that's not cool. But we can like pick some of the things that in some portfolios that work, like it can work for your portfolio too. I don't think it's a crime. I don't think there's any problem on that. I think it's actually positive, because you're telling that you do research, that you understand about your industry. You're actually telling a lot about yourself as a designer too. So anyway, so how I wanted to do this page, I want people to read the first sentence and to understand like almost exactly what that project is about. So in this case, the Meta case, we enable metaverse users to create avatars from a face scan. So if you read the sentence, you already kind of understand what this feature and product is about. So I wanted to replicate that throughout all the cases to create consistency. when you hover each project, you see an animation of something related to that project. So that's what I wanted to do, to create some visual, like sort of pizzazz. And yeah, I have a description for each of the case right in the cases page. So then when people tap into these cases to see them, they already have a sort of they know what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty much it for this page. So you can see that every case has some sort of visual element aligned to it. And there's also, like to what Timothy said, there's a layer of storytelling in these cases that I wanted to create this imprint.
How many case studies do you think a designer should have on their website?
That's actually a good question, because if you think about interviews, you usually have time to present 2 cases, and then if there's time, you then gonna have like a third. I think one case would take probably like 20 minutes to present, and then the read would be like 5 to 10 minutes. So I don't want to take a lot of someone's time. So I think that, and my take and my impression as someone who reviews portfolios too is, if you have a lot of cases, I get a little anxious because I want to see everything. And then if you have a lot of cases, the less cases, they start to lower the quality, just because we can't have like 10 amazing case studies. We always going to have a case study that you think that's probably like not your best case study. But I think that probably somewhere in between 5 and 8 is like ideal. But I'd love to hear your thoughts too.
No, yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. I think for me, the approach that I like to take and tell people to take is that, like, again, there's like a sort of a narrative here. So like, what story does each case study tell? Like, what are you trying to communicate? And so maybe there's a specific type of skill or a specific experience that you want to try and visualize or communicate with a specific case study. So maybe over like 3 or 4 case studies, you've kind of shown your visual skills, your interaction design, your product thinking, and maybe obviously all of them probably have all those things, but maybe one has like is really, really visual, one is super interaction. So you kind of get like this diverse sense of like, in many situations, with many different types of problems, with many different types of potential solutions, there's like, here's the breadth of like my skill. So that's kind of like usually how I think about it, is like it's more focusing on the type of skill you want to try and communicate versus like any sort of hard number. But yeah, I think like, yeah, I err on less, because I kind of like I usually like say like 3 to 5 usually, but yeah, I think 5 is around that 5 number is great, because you can kind of show the diversity of situations that you're working in. Yeah.
No, totally, I agree.
But if you are, sorry, just to jump in, but if you are a new designer who don't have 5 projects, that's also okay. Like, I think it is possible to get a strong signal on your work and what you're doing based on just a couple of projects that you've done. And yeah, if you have other projects you've done on the side, I know when I started out, most of my portfolio was just like things that I had made up myself, just like ideas that I've had, logos I drew. Like, you know, I think that's also something that's strong, because if you're new in the industry, no one is expecting you to have 5-10 years experience. They want to see more like the raw talent, the potential. And so like showing that is still really good. Yeah.
Totally. That's something I was, while you're talking about, I was thinking also, like, we don't have a lot of junior professionals in our industry just because of the way the industry is set up now. I think I mentor a lot of people who are starting, and I also think that it's not a problem at all to come up with your own like product, to come up with your own ideas. I really love when people come out straight out of the uni with probably like 3 like different like products, but they're like thought out straight from the research, straight from the problem phase, straight from when they come from an idea that you have at uni, I think it's also okay. It depends. It also depends on how that case is structured, how the level of craft, the level of polish that you have in those cases, that how you structure your storytelling. So even today, if I have an idea of a product that I think it's a good solution, it's solving like a problem that I actually have, I would definitely have it in my portfolio if it looks if it looks great. I know a lot of really seasoned designers, people who are like directors. They have like their own products, and every product they started as a playful moment for them. So I think that there's like a really good moment to come up with case studies is by creating your own products. If you don't have anything in your portfolio that you want to, if you don't have like any real case study, it's easy to come up with your own products and have something that would help you build your portfolio. Oh, I think one thing I wanna say, I wanted to touch the point that Timothy you started about diversity of types of projects. So like you mentioned, you have projects with different problems, with different outcomes, with different designs, of course, and each project has its own nature. Some projects are like super like finished; it's exactly how you see online. Some projects they are visions, and some projects they are like more on the marketing side than on the project, and then on the product side. I think this is the space where we have to show our tool set, so it's good to show diversity. It's good to show a project where you are much more strategic than visual and the other way around. So I think that's like the moment. I think I would love to call that out because it's really important. And I 100% agree with you, Timothy, that having this broad set of works might be helpful. But cool, yeah. Like on my portfolio here, we have a couple of projects. For instance, like the Meta project is like it comes from a strategy background. Of course, we needed to create avatars straight from a face scan, but it also has like a visual outcome, so it's a more balanced case study. Whereas the Google project is highly on the strategy side, because you kind of change the mental model of how people edit and manage their business profiles. And then I have one here, which is the WISE data visualization vision, which was launched in WISE's Instagram. I think this one is much more on the visual side. So that kind of illustrates what we are talking about, having different types of projects in different types of the project spectrum. So then we can have a good diversity and set of tools, and people can understand what they can expect from us. So let's jump into the first case study, which is the metaverse avatars from a face scan. How I want to talk about how I structured this case study more than the case study itself. So again, one thing that's really important for me in this portfolio is to call out where you are in the very first moment with a really big in typography. So the title, it's big, it's intentionally big. And the second thing you see is I wanted to have this logo as a sort of start to brand this part of the experience, because until now the whole portfolio is a little bit, like I said, Bauhaus based. So I wanted to start like creating this moment for the brands that I'm working with. So I have the branding here, and what is this project about, which is, I usually call this project in a nutshell. So in this case, is we enable metaverse users to effortlessly create their avatars for a video selfie. Again, I'm almost repeating what I said before, but because we're in the case study page, I wanted people to understand exactly the case they're about to see. And then the first thing that I like to do is start with the strategy, but also be visual at all time. For me, like I need to look at every screen and every scroll of my portfolio, and everything needs to be in shape. Probably as I scroll through this page, I would find something that I want to fix, and then as we wrap up the call, I'll go there and fix it. So there's this sort of feeling that someone I worked with at RGA used to say, it's everyday better. So if you're like working on digital products or anything that is related to technology, there are like ongoing projects. You should be have that sentiment of the everyday better. So every day you jump in your portfolio and in any work you do, you have like and you have the chance to improve something. Add that to your backlog and execute it when you have time, because that's how you're gonna get to like the finesse that we need. So I think that for me works a lot. So here we have like a visual. One thing that I really think it's cool about this project, which is which is the mannequin and the transitions, and it talks about diversity and identity here. So I love this project for many reasons. And then my role, it's really important for me to know what you did in this project straight from the beginning. And then as we scroll again, let's be visual. Again, in this case, I'm showing the screenshots. It's actually a screenshot. I wanted to be really literal here. I wanted people to see the real product, the thing that was really launched. And I wanted it to be visual too. So adding animations and thinking about transitions and like really adding like spice to your portfolio, for me, that's really important. That's one thing I strongly recommend people to do as well. So visual representation of all the screens. Of course, you're not going to understand what you're looking for, but it's that's what I call the eyebrow raiser. So you need to raise eyebrows here in this moment. And then you start talking about the project, which is now let's get into the content. So the people problem and how it was before. So just give an idea to users how this project was before you launched it, and the people problem that you landed on. That's how I envision for this project. Of course, there are other projects in my portfolio that I might have different topics, because it makes more sense for that project. So the topics are usually for each project. Of course, I try to build consistency between each project. Of course, you're going to see people problem across pretty much all the projects that I have in my portfolio. You're going to see the before, but there are some instances and some things that I only add to specific projects because they ask that to be. So here,
just to jump in on that. So I love this. I think like, especially the people problem, the approach you're taking here. One thing I mention to people a lot is that, like, I think it's really important to communicate the sort of the human element here, that we're trying to, how are we trying to help people, because there's in some situations you might mention, oh, well, the problem actually was that the avatar builder was getting low usage, and so we needed to find a way to increase usage. That's technically the problem, but that's actually not really how we think about problems. Actually, it's what's the friction the user is experiencing, and how do we help them? And like the second order effect is higher usage, right? And so I love, like, you kind of frame this as a problem for the person who's using it versus like for the business, and also giving a clear picture of like, hey, this is what it was before. So you're priming people to understand the impact you've created, because like showing the finished thing without communicating where it started kind of reduces the impact, both in terms of like impact you have on the the reader, whether that's the recruiter or hiring manager, but also like reduces the impact the experience you had. Like, hey, I actually went from this thing that took X amount of time and X amount of clicks to like this thing that was like took 10 seconds and increased revenue like this. So like I think it's great kind of seeing that breakdown. Yeah.
Totally. Thanks for calling that out. Yeah, it's I don't have anything else to add. It's perfectly said. Yeah. And again, I try to illustrate the things that I'm saying. In this case, I wanted to say that we have too many categories. I think it's 32 categories in this case. So you can imagine by adding 32 categories, it would take you like forever. In this case, it's 4 minutes and 50 taps, the average. And I just okay, let's illustrate those categories here with the category tab, with the category navigation. So that kind of gives the user, that gives the person who is reading your portfolio, it gives them the impression, the understanding of what we're talking about. And then they say, oh, it's actually, it is a lot, you know?
Yeah.
And then you present the hypothesis, which is, for me, it's something that different companies have different methodologies and different approaches. And I learned to use hypothesis, which is kind of standardized every project. Every project you have a hypothesis, so you can utilize this concept throughout. So I wouldn't be using this hypothesis if this wasn't something I could replicate. I learned that in one of my my jobs, and then I used that since then, which is how do you formulate hypotheses is by doing this, we expect that, you know. So for instance, in this case, is that giving users a better editing starting point will reduce the efforts to have an avatar and improve the overall completion rate. So that was like the hypothesis we had since the beginning of this project, and I wanted to bring that up so people can understand where you're coming from. And yeah, who we are designing to, I think it's really, one thing that's really important to say here is that if I would design my portfolio for myself or for someone else, I would definitely like have less text content. I mean, I think that's like the majority of the designers who started as graphic designers or visual designers. For me, I think sometimes a visual talks more than words. I tell that to everyone I mentor, is that while you're interviewing, while you're looking for a job, it's almost like when you are doing a driver's license exam. So for instance, if you want to, if you are, I don't know, if you're doing something on your driver's license exam and you have to look to the rear view mirror, you have to look, and the person who is analyzing you needs to understand and see that you're looking to the rear view mirror. Whereas when you're like just driving for yourself, you just look at it, and you don't need to do any movement to show people that you're looking to the rear view mirror. So I think that a portfolio, or like when you're presenting your work, you should be really intentional and you should be really pointing things out. So then it's easier for people to understand what you're doing. Sometimes you take things for granted, you know, like sometimes you just look at the rear view mirror and you don't need to make a head movement to show that. So, but in this case, in a UX centric portfolio, to look for roles as in the product design industry, I think we need to be a little bit more content oriented. Again, the visual designer side of me kind of like get hurt a little, but I think it's really important for people to understand this. That said, I really wanted people to understand who we are designing from in this case. So I think this is a little bit obvious, but sometimes you have to bring up the obvious in our portfolios. That's really important for me. So we're designing for two people in this case, the perfectionists and the on the go. The perfectionists are those people who are, I would use like 10 hours of my time just to finesse my avatar. And there's the on the go people who are like, I'm going to be using my avatar on VR just to play for something. And then I just need my avatar right away. So then we needed to design for those two people. And I really want people to understand who we're designing for. And yeah, the solution needed to accommodate and to help those two profiles. So the perfectionists can create an avatar from scratch, while those in a rush can create their avatar from a video selfie. And if the video selfie doesn't meet their expectations, they can immediately edit the specific traits. So that's the solution we found to help those two audiences. So when I present the design, in this case, I really wanted to show the design happening. So this is actually a screen recording from my WhatsApp. And I really wanted to show the entry points and show that this is a real product. This was launched. exactly the way that I'm showing right now. So what I usually do when I'm presenting the work, before I go through the context, which I just did, I just go like screen by screen and I highlight all the things from those screens that I think they're important. So the greeting moment, the warm up. So we come from your entry point. So it's always important to show the entry point where you're coming from. And then the capturing moment. So how you capture the face and pick a skin tone. So again, show and tell. That's everything. You don't need to do anything more than that, and be a little bit more visual here. And the other thing, like loading and seeing the results. Again, show and tell. You see every step of the product journey, of that product flow actually. So how you load and see the results in your tray of stickers. After the user sees all the screens, I just want to show like the impact that for me are most relevant. In this case, we promoted impact in empty state mannequin, which we started with this loading animation, which I started doing myself together with the animator. We're designing straight on Cinema 4D. I just wanted to have a more visual moment and create like build up for the expectations. And then we did like a loading pattern, right? And then this loading pattern became a thinking for the empty state mannequin. And that's how like good ideas and good designs come up. When you start with something that you have passion for, I'm going to finesse this thing because I want this thing to look good. And then, then I explain why I think this is important and why I'm calling that out. So we needed a loading pattern while the tool generated an avatar results. To delight and excite the user, we proposed an identity agnostic mannequin, which I directed with the arts team on 3D. And the animation created skin tone empty state due to its identity openness. And this was something that was really cool for me to work on. And I really wanted to call that out because that's the intersection of the things that I like doing the most, which is product design and art direction.
Yeah, I think it's nice sort of calling out like the thing. You know, one of the questions I always ask designers is like, well, out of this project, what did you enjoy most in it? Or what stood out to you the most, I think? And sort of calling that in your portfolio is really cool because, again, it adds this personal touch to it of like, you know, within this work, here's the thing that I personally found most impactful or found the most interesting or took the most out of. Just paints a much richer picture of who you are as a person. So yeah, it's great to see that call out here. Nice.
Cool. Lovely. And and in the end, I think I crit myself here. I think the results here are into the product benefits themselves. I would love to be able to share more business related outcomes here. Of course, we had some numbers while I was working on this project, but we need. I'm highly ethical with showing things and information from companies. And one thing I can say is that like it's pretty obvious that we reduced the completion rate from 4 minutes to 40 seconds and from 50 to 6 steps. If the user wants to go straight with our suggestion. And for confidentiality purposes, I can't add like the final data and the research results here. But they're all like showing that we are moving towards the right direction, which is good. So yeah, this is one thing that I always get questions from designers, which is, can I show? There's a lot of things that I wanted to share, but I can't because of confidentiality or NDAs or some things like that. And that's true. That's something we need to deal with. We need to be ethical, especially with working with big companies, and I think every company we should respect their policies, I think. But there's always something we can show, that is not like telling any confidential like sort of information. There's always like an approach that you can tailor your portfolios towards the things that you can share. So I think that's how I usually do. I would just like lay out the way that portfolio, that case study would be perfect, and then I'll just go ahead and cut it, and then like according to the things that I can share. I would love to hear your thoughts, Timothy, because you probably go through the same thing, and you probably got that question through mentorship before, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, there's definitely like, yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of different approaches that I've seen designers take, whether that's like hiding things behind a password that you might release and give access to, or, you know, like maybe there's a opportunity within a actual interview process. You can say, well, I can share more about this once we talk on an interview, but right now I can only, you know, mention a small amount. I think that's fine. That's exactly something we kind of all have to deal with. So that makes sense. Yeah, I did want to kind of like, so kind of do like an overarching kind of review or like overview, you know, the structure. I think the structure is really strong. Like it kind of starts with a bit of like a vision of like, here's what we were trying to achieve. Like we enabled like metaverse users to effortlessly create their avatars from a video selfie, and then dive it into like, here's the role I played in this vision. And like, then, you know, what problem were we trying to solve? Where were we currently? You know, what was the hypothesis? So given this problem, if we did this, we could actually, you know, get a better outcome. And then, you know, here's how I did that, showing the work. And then here was the result. I think that's a pretty tried and tested, solid structure to go with. One thing that I would love to get your thoughts on, just to kind of push it back to you, is that like there are no wireframes, there's no hand sketches, there's no like in progress stuff here. I mean, I've seen a ton of portfolios with like really, really in-depth, super long case studies that kind of go like from the beginning, showing like, you know, like post-it notes and like a fig jam and like all of that. So what was the balance between like going really lightweight of like, here's the work, here's the, you know, providing the right information, you know, versus like, here's a really strong, in-depth, super, super detailed case study of every single flow. Like, which one is the right one to go with?
That's a good question. And that's also something that we talk about between ourselves, between designers. I think, first of all, I think there's no right or wrong. And there's no, like, I wouldn't say anything that I say here means that like, you're doing wrong if you do the other way around. So, but there's also always like a balance that we should find between showing finesse work and showing before the work, which is like your ideation phase, your whiteboarding sessions and fig jams and stuff. I usually we all go through that moment where everything is a sketch or everything is a beginning of a thought, right? I think for me, while looking through portfolios of designers, I usually, and I say usually because I've seen cases where it proved me wrong, but usually when designers show whiteboards and sticky notes and fig jams, when I usually look through them, they don't say much other than just like, we had an ideation session, you know? So instead of utilizing a real estate of my case study with something that doesn't look polished, just for the sake of having someone looking and say, oh, they went through a whiteboarding session, they did like the whole ideation thing, it came from a more wireframey moment. I'd rather like show the thing designed, because for me, like, I'm super visual oriented in everything that I share, and I think that things should be intentional in the designs. So if I show something, I want to be able to look at and actually see that thing exactly, that thing played a role. So I want to be able to see in your post-it notes, I want to see that post-it note being solved later. If I want to see if you're showing your wireframe, I want to see that wireframe paying off later. And because in most cases, it's really hard to tell the story, because when you show a post-it screen, it's like usually a screen filled with post-its. for me, that doesn't help selling the work. But I totally see that for some designer profiles and for some case study profiles, I totally see value in that if you think that's gonna help sell the project. So, but for me, like if I go to a shop to buy, for instance, a couch, I don't want to see the progress of making that couch. I want to see that couch really beautiful in front of me.
Mhm.
So, but that's me again, and that's my
Yeah.
profile of looking for couches. Like maybe someone has like a different approach. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts, Timothy.
No, I think you put it well. Like, I think for me, the question I always ask is like, why?
Yeah.
Like, why is it on there? Like, why? Like, what is the purpose of it being on your site? Like, there needs to be kind of a larger purpose more than just that it's there. And I think you touched on it really well. Like, if there is a post-it note or like a sort of a screenshot of the ideation session, I think it's important to kind of say, well, how does this like contribute to the narrative of what I'm trying to say here or what I'm trying to show here? Like, whether it's like,
Right.
well, because of this, maybe actually what you want to communicate is actually I ran the like research session. I ran the ideation. So actually I have experience in doing like running big design sprints or things like that. Like, I think it's more about like communicating your skills and what you've done. And so if you want to show like the process, like, I think it should be in service of like, that idea of like, what is a narrative? What is a story? So yeah, I think I agree. Obviously there is no like one way of doing this, but the question I just would ask is like, well, if you want to put something on your portfolio, like why? And also like thinking from the narrative point of view, like, again, I know that recruiters are looking through a ton of portfolios. And so we want to try and really like stand out and I feel like my feeling is that like save the explanation, save the process, save that for like that chance where you can discuss it and talk about it in those interview processes. Like, the portfolio is like getting your foot in the door. It's really about like making a big impact early, catching attention, grabbing that attention. People feel like, okay, yeah, this person, I feel like we should talk to them. That's really what you want to try and get out of it. And so you can save the actual portfolio review that you might have in an interview process to kind of dive a bit deeper, because you'll definitely be asked a ton of questions about your process, how you arrived at a solution, etc. in those sessions. So yeah, I kind of agree, but I think we're both very visual people. Like, I think some other people are a little bit more like process and design thinking. And so if that is more what your strengths are, I think it's also great to, display those. Like, another designer that I talked to was like, well, should I, I have a bit more of a PM background, but I don't know, should I talk about that? I know this is for a design role. Yeah, I mean, yeah, talk about that. Like, part of design is like understanding product and figuring out like how it should fit and figuring out the business element and how that works with technology. And so like, if that's a strength that you have, like, you should lead with that strength. Like, so depending on your sort of makeup or where you are on the spectrum of a designer, like, I think you should still lead with what you're strong in. So again, as long as you have a strong why you want to put something on your site, that's usually what I would defer to. Yeah,
Totally. Yeah, I think it depends on the design profile, right? Like you just said, I think it's really, if you put two designers that do exactly the same things and they have similar roles, they have similar profiles, but if you go into the nitty of every design skill they have, there's always going to be a slight difference between what they do and what you can utilize them to do and what they're going to be happy doing. So it's really hard to have two designers. It's almost impossible to have two designers with the identical set of skills. And that's the beauty of our industry. And I think every industry is pretty much like that too. So, and I think that's why it's really hard to say that there is like one format fits all. I think it's more of what I can learn, for instance, from Timothy's portfolio, that like resonates well for me. And you have to kind of like read the room and understand what's your space into that spectrum. I know that's super hard. And it kind of it kind of has a layer of you knowing yourself too. So that's really hard. We can get really dense in terms of, we can get really academic in terms of like how a portfolio reflects you and your work. It's really hard to understand like that. But for me, I agree. I think, to be honest, Timothy, I think I take what you said as a feedback, and I think that I need to maybe that's for myself. I love understanding and having a moment for self-criticism. I think that I at some point I want to incorporate a good way of showing like the of the progress in a more visual way.
Mm-hmm.
That communicates. So I think that maybe like my next portfolio, let's say, will have a little bit more of the process, because now that I'm working with different companies, I really need to lay out the process right straight away in the very beginning of our interaction. We only have 3-4 weeks to work on that project. I really need to be straightforward with that the overall design process. So showing that I have this skill might help me with the things I'm working for. So I think that's really important, and I take this as a feedback, and it's actually a good outcome of this call also.
Okay, well, I mean, in the spirit of getting better every day, or doing better every day, like maybe we can talk a little bit about, you know, you mentioned you kind of had to put this together in a week, which is like, you know, it's amazing to, you know, putting that together in a week. But if you could do things differently, if you could start again, if you could maybe try, you know, to build it another time, like, what would you do differently? How would you change this? What do you think? Where do you think like there's areas where you could maybe improve or do something a little bit differently and better?
That's a good point. I would definitely I like the structure of the overall information architecture of the portfolio. I think I like that it's fluid. So for instance, if you see one case, you go straight and then you jump to the next case. I like when I don't have to come back and search for the next project, when it's kind of like fluid. You see the whole portfolio just by scrolling, you know, and then you see all the projects. But one thing that I wanted to do is I know that I'm talking about having a more brand agnostic, but it's still with some sort of personal branding portfolio design and template. But I still think I want to do something more product oriented, something that looks more like a product than something that looks like a personal website. Because what I love doing is elevating product design. And for instance, like this looks like a desktop website. Even if you see it on your mobile, it looks like a mobile adaptation of a desktop website. So I've been seeing a lot of portfolios, a lot of really interesting ways of navigation, and they are still like straightforward. They're still brand agnostic, but they add a little bit more of they show that I really care about micro interactions. That's what I do. So I want to add a little bit more of what I do into my portfolio. So for instance, by creating better like micro interactions other than just a quick hover here, you know, that's one thing about the structure of the portfolio. The other thing is I would probably do something with less case studies, but I want to skim this a little bit more and have more straightforward stuff.
I like the balance of actually how you did it on the homepage, and that like you had this reel kind of. That's a really nice thing that I want to add to my site eventually when I redesign it. But yeah, that reel was great, and I think like but yeah, like you mentioned, copy is something that can either be reduced or finessed or just like continually like massaged. That's really, really good. Yeah, I think, you know, the flow overall, having the chance to kind of like continue through the project without having to go back to the homepage is strong. And yeah, even with like the Wise project, even looking at the page there, like you can kind of see it's definitely more visual, a lot less text. And so that diversity is really key. But yeah, I think it's been really fun, like going through your work and seeing the thought behind it, and I've been taking notes myself. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of like just first say thank you, Arthur, for taking the time to walk through this and share. And I know your site is an inspiration to a lot of people, and yeah, I mean, with all the tools out there now, like with Framer and Wix and all these other tools, it's really easy for designers to build great websites and kind of like have the control over their vision. And so yeah, it's been really cool kind of seeing this as a designer who I guess doesn't write code. So it's really, really nice. And yeah, it's been great. Thanks for everyone who's tuned in and taken time to listen. If you have questions or thoughts, you can definitely throw those in the comments. You can reach out to us via email. Just go on goodmaven.com and you'll find the email there as well. And if you're looking for portfolio reviews, you can also reach out to us, and we can definitely help you massage and adjust and improve your work. I want to say thank you, Arthur, and thank you all of you for tuning in. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks, Timothy. It was a pleasure. Like, actually, we haven't met in person before we started talking about doing this video, and it's a pleasure to meet you and to learn from you and to talk to you. It's a privilege for me to be here. So thanks, everyone at Good Maven. I think it's been super helpful for me. It was actually like a pretty good moment. I feel like I did like 10 years of mentorship now, like after this call. And it's a pleasure to be among like people who are like willing to actually help other people like get a better job or like land on their dream job or something like that. For me, inclusion is definitely something that's my heart, and it's part of what I do, is try to have as many diverse faces in the places that I work for. So I'm here for portfolio reviews, for mentorship, and anything else you want help with. But yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks Timothy and everyone at Good Maven. If you want to, like Timothy said, if you want to have sessions with us, just ping us, probably on the best thing, maybe LinkedIn or something like that. Thank you very much, and have a good week, day, or yeah, whatever you are at. Thank you.
So to wrap up, let's talk about 5 key takeaways that will help you elevate your portfolio. First one, clarity in storytelling. One of the strongest aspects of Arthur's portfolio was the clear storytelling throughout. Each project had a clear logical flow, making it easier for reviewers to understand the challenges and how Arthur approached them. Your portfolio should really tell a cohesive story, with each project connecting seamlessly to guide the viewer through your design journey, balancing depth and brevity. Arthur's portfolio struck a nice balance between showing and telling. It's really important to provide enough detail to demonstrate your thought processes without overwhelming the viewer. So highlight key design details and outcomes while avoiding too much detail that might feel repetitive, especially when it comes to process. 3, showcase your visual design. Arthur's portfolio does a great job at showcasing both product thinking and his visual design skills. Visuals are just as important as functionality, especially for roles requiring a strong eye for design. So ensure your portfolio balances interaction design and visual aesthetics, especially if the role demands it. 4, tailoring for the audience. When actively interviewing, Arthur tailors their portfolio to suit specific jobs or interview stages. Going deep into specific areas is great for design discussions, but might miss the mark in broader reviews. Adapt your portfolio to suit the audience. Whether it's for a design review or an interview, it's important to highlight your most relevant skills. And 5, preparing for feedback and growth. When your portfolio is reviewed, employers naturally offer feedback and identify areas for growth. While you may not always agree with everything they say, it's important to remain open-minded and self-aware to your growth areas. Always be open to feedback. Demonstrating a growth mindset and showing the steps that you're taking to improve is just as important at showcasing your strengths. Thanks again for watching. And if you're interested in more design tips, like and subscribe.